Oh, all right.
I'm on the mic. Okay. Believe it or not, when you get to be my age and you have cataracts, bright lights like this are going to make everything very difficult to see. But what I want to do is look at the slides, so I'll just stand out here if you don't mind. My name is John Dunn, and I teach emergency medicine at Fort Hood. In the emergency department, we see pretty much anything that comes through the door, whether it's the back door or the front door, and I teach residents. We have about 30 residents in an emergency department that sees 60,000 patients a year or a little bit more, the largest emergency department population of visits in any of the Department of Defense emergency departments. It's a great job. I love it. Anyway, I am also designated as the lead author in the chapter on human health effects of both warming and air pollution issues. And so as a result, what I'm going to do is talk about warming, and these two gentlemen are going to talk about air pollution science and EPA misconduct that relates to that science on small particulates and air pollution generally. I will stick to looking at the issues related to warming and whether it can cause any significant harm to humans or to the biosphere. The other people that are involved in the book, the chapter that I'm writing, and this is information on how to look at the chapter in its latest draft, if you're interested. It's a 125-page chapter that has, it's hard to say how many references. A good deal of the work on the references was done by other people that are mentioned in the list that we'll come to in just a minute. Obviously, Craig Idso, a real scholar and a hard-working man, and his dad, Sherwood, were involved in gathering up some of the references that are in the chapter that are important for what I'm going to say about warming and the effects of any possible warming that might occur for the human race or for the biosphere. Others that are involved in the review process, including the contributors and reviewers, Dr. Jerry Arnett and Dr. Charles Badig, were involved in preparing the text. Jim Enstrom is sitting as the number 2 guy. He's the tall guy. And Craig and Sherwood aren't here, but Stanley Young couldn't be here because he's scheduled to do a lecture in Europe. He's a statistician and has done some original research along with Jim Enstrom on the issue of whether air pollution is killing anybody. And you will hear from Jim at length on the basic problem that we have with the EPA. They departed from good science with regards to doing human health studies in an ecological study sense. Epidemiology is the study of populations. It's a very uncertain area of research because there are an awful lot of confounders and problems, and it's a great opportunity for data dredging in the search for truth and justice. The EPA is lying for justice. It's as simple as that, okay? Scientists will do that. They'll do it for money, they'll do it for ambition, they'll do it for social pressures. There are lots of reasons why science can go off the rails. We've had enough talk about that today. I was a big fan of Angelo Codavia when he pointed out what Eisenhower said in his farewell address. And that was in 2010. He put it in an essay. It was called Pretense and Democracy. Scientific Pretense and Democracy was the name of the essay, and it was written for American Spectator. And that was when Eisenhower's statement, right after the military-industrial statement, came to my attention. And from that time on, I've been pushing it out to people. Remember, science can be bought too. And frequently it is by an overpowering and tyrannical statist or people with just an ideology problem. So, 5 possible effects of fossil fuel and the burning of fossil fuels. You know, fossil fuels sitting in a tub don't make any difference. When you burn them, we end up with these issues. that are related to prosperity, environmental protection, and technology. And I would tell you this, that we all know from other presentations and from common sense, energy is a secret to progress. Energy comes from burning fossil fuels. You can get it from nuke, you can get it from hydro, but there are so many reasons why that hasn't worked out well for us, and it's certainly not the way for progress to come to the third world. So it can produce some air pollution because there are emissions when you burn stuff. Global warming and mortality rates is going to be my subject for today. Global warming and diseases is also my subject, and global warming and the insect-borne diseases, which are called vector-borne diseases. So, let's go here. I have to go down here because as an old guy, I don't see that well. And I got to get out here where I can see better. And I don't think it's going to bother you. Air pollution and the EPA's lack of scientific method is one of the subjects that's part of the book. The assumptions, the observational studies, the circumstantial evidence are all part of the scientific presentation that we do in the chapter, and I'm going to try to talk about just the ones that relate to warming. The human experiment scandal is going to be Steve Malloy's baby. So, what is the biosphere on the planet Earth like? It likes warm. We operate at a certain temperature. Okay, everybody knows what their temperature is supposed to be. 98.6 orally, 99.6 rectally. If your temperature isn't around that, it can be a little bit higher or a little bit lower during the day depending upon your hormonal status and your activity status. But if it's not around that, you can end up being sick. Winter and summer. Winter kills 10% more people around the globe than summer does. Don't forget that. 10% more. The variation around that 10% number is going to be insignificant in terms of the more important issue, which is winter is a killer, summer is not. Moderate climes, you'd say, well, you know, in the moderate climes, in the latitudes that have moderate climes, is it going to make that much difference whether it's cool or warm or hot or cold? Yes, it does. In studies done in places like Singapore, cooler weather kills more people. Period. The research is undeniable. Can't be changed. The fact is, when you take a look at death rates, they go up when the weather gets cool, even in the moderate climes. Diurnal variance, what the heck is that? Well, it ends up being kind of important because in addition to warm and cold being factors, cold being a bad factor, warm being a good factor, diurnal variance is the amount of temperature change in a day, in a 24-hour period. And the more that variance occurs, the more people die. And it's probably because of stress. And there's an interesting kind of a correlation that exists there, and I'm not going to talk about correlations other than in the sensible way to look at it. It looks like it's related. I'm not sure exactly what the explanation is, but colder weather brings a bigger diurnal variance in the daily temperature. Meteorologists can tell you why. I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that when the atmosphere is warmer, there's a tendency for it to mitigate extremes so that in fact it warms everything up to the point where you talk about the frog that's kind of being boiled quietly. Well, that may be the case in terms of what happens with diurnal variance when the temperature is higher, when it's warmer. During the warmer weather, then you have a decrease in the amount of diurnal variance. So, what's your latitude? Well, if you want to stay alive a long time, it's probably better for you to get into the lower latitudes, into the warmer weather. And we'll show you why. And what's the ideal for temperature for humans? Okay, so I like to wear socks to bed anymore. I used to sleep in the nude. I'm sure you'll like to think about that. But my wife kind of jokes about the fact that I like to wear socks to bed now. Well, the fact is that when you get older, your circulatory system deteriorates a little bit. So it's important for you to know that. So, mortality rates. The plants and animals do better in warmer weather. Anybody disagree with that? Plants and animals grow better, produce more tissue, are healthier, less likely to be damaged and injured when they are in the presence, when they are living in a warmer climate. That's true of all of the biosphere, all the way down to microorganisms. Observational research on the effects of warming and the benefits of warming is in this chapter, 125 pages, with a big section on warming that shows that it is the best thing for the living creatures on this planet. Not just the human race, everybody. Mortality studies of cardiovascular, respiratory, infectious diseases are all positive about warming. You have less strokes, less heart attacks, less vascular events because less clotting goes on. Cold brings on clotting. Cooling brings on clotting. And the reason is that it sludges the circulation in the small blood vessels. It even sludges the vessels, the circulation in the vessels of the core vessels. So it produces increasing clotting. Cardiovascular disease that we're interested in is mostly caused by clots. So decreased clots, decreased problems, decreased deaths. Respiratory disease. Everybody knows you get pneumonia in the winter. Viral illnesses go around in the winter. If you're going to be born in the summer, did you know that your life expectancy is longer because you have less health problems in the first year of life? So, studies show, they say, that warming is good even long term. It's good because it reduces the amount of burden that you have that comes from being born during the winter. When kids are born during the winter, we have to deal with the fact that they pick up viruses and all kinds of infections. Insects, they're everywhere. The tiger is all over the United States except for the northwestern states and the states in the mountains. Okay? And all of the other vectors of disease, even though you say, well, it looks like tropical diseases, so if you get warming, is that going to bring the tropical diseases to the northern United States? Remember this. The last malaria outbreak of significance occurred in Finland and St. Petersburg. The mosquitoes, they can live farther north, so don't worry about the vectors. They're going to do okay. It's hygiene and progress that reduce the tropical diseases. That includes Zika and chikungunya and all the ones that you read about. And the three major mosquitoes to know about are Aedes aegypti, which takes care of yellow fever and dengue, and Anopheles. I'd like to put an Anopheles mosquito in Donald Rickles' house because that's what carries malaria. And he wouldn't be able to use DDT because he banned it. Fleas, kissing bugs, and flies, even the tsetse fly, can carry viruses and illnesses because they're bloodsuckers. So they exist in all kinds of places. What was the most serious problem for Napoleon's army when he tried to take Russia? Typhus from fleas. It was worse than guns. Data dredging is going to be Jim's subject. I'll let him do that. Air pollution doesn't kill hundreds of thousands of people. Does warming seem that deadly to you? I don't think that most of you would regret moving to a warmer climate. I live in Texas. I'm not going to go back to where I used to live. Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, cold places. As far as the catastrophic sea level thing, we've talked about that enough in the other presentations, and that's where most of the human effects that the warmers think is something worth talking about as a catastrophic thing is the important thing that they want to try to emphasize to people. And I think it's a bunch of baloney. You can always move away from water. There it is. Warming is good for you. Heat illness and the heat wave illnesses are about housing and whether people get proper care and are supported in their let's say, their debilitated state. The people who die in heat waves are people who are at the end of their life. Those are the viruses. This is about strokes. Those are about the mosquitoes. Those are about the vector-borne diseases, and warmer is better, and we'll do questions later. Thank you.